Good morning. Welcome to Tier 1 Interventions with jonely and Cheri.
Hey, jonely here, Jay-Z in the house today. And Tier 1 Interventions is really about strengthening our core in schools. If you think about your body, our overall health really depends on our core and our core strength. In schools, our core is our Tier 1 general classroom. General ed teacher with intervention specialist or other support personnel in the classroom, an inclusive model serving all kids at the same time. So Tier 1 interventions is about the instructional strategies that are going to enhance and maximize the learning for all students, regardless of ability or disability. Tier 1 needs to be strong enough to make certain that all ability levels of students get their needs met. And I know this can seem really overwhelming for the general classroom teacher. However, Tier 1 interventions is all about what are those techniques. Those techniques have to do with the student body, brain, and emotion. And how do we get all three of those things ready to learn the content? We get this question all the time. Are your strategies research-based? That's a big topic. How do I know that this is going to work? What's it grounded in? And my answer to that is absolutely yes. Everything we're teaching for this core general classroom is research-based. Now we have to define what research-based means. And then I've just given you all of the examples of it. Research-based is the work that we do. Is it grounded in the mighty hands of giants that have come before us? And what that means is the research and the work that others have done, how has that then impacted or affected the parallels in the strategies that we teach? Research-based is about looking at these influencers. I'm going to mention one other book, Make It Stick. Make It Stick. Make It Stick is a number of researched strategies for cognitive science. And all of the strategies that Cheri and I are teaching are supported through the strategies that at the university level are taught in the book Make It Stick and in other places about how to trigger and stimulate good, just right cognitive demand. 120 chart is mathematical Tier 1 intervention strategy, even though it's the second one we're talking about. I would say that it's the most powerful and most important. What are we trying to do in the core classroom for mathematics? The ultimate goal is to improve student number sense. Number sense is the innate intuitive understanding of number. Number sense cannot be taught. It can only be learned and experienced. Our instructional techniques are absolutely essential when we're trying to improve a student's number sense, because I cannot explicitly teach this. I can only engage them in repetitive good. The 120 chart connects to dozens and dozens of standards from kindergarten through high school. And what we're going to share with you today is all of the standards and targets that the 120 chart can expose for our students. The 120 chart is a chart that has 120 numbers on it. It's as simple as that. We're going to walk through each of the interactions that we take students through with this chart. I'm going to share with you interaction 1, which is just introducing the 120 chart to our students. And when I say interactions, we know that our strongest math students that may even be identified as gifted, may only need 1 or 2 interactions with something before forever learning happens. They're going to know it forever. Bright students who are not gifted, there is a distinct difference between gifted students and bright students. Gifted students love learning, don't like school. Bright students love school, don't necessarily like learning. They're almost polar opposites. Bright students oftentimes appear to achieve higher because they work harder. They are teacher pleasers. They want to do well. Gifted students don't have a care about any of that. However, gifted students have this stronger innate intuitive sense of numbers. How do I know this? Because for a number of years, I studied my gifted students. I do not think like gifted students think in mathematics. I studied my gifted students and tried to extract the way that they thought about mathematics. And most of the techniques and tasks that I share with teachers today, I learned from my gifted kids. They have a really savvy sense of number. But bright students might need 5 to 7 interactions with the same thing before they have this forever learning. Bright students will give themselves their own interactions because they tend to work above and beyond. So they get more interactions regardless of whether those are provided in the classroom. I'm going to skip all the way to our struggling students, maybe students with learning disabilities or lower cognitive abilities, or students that have some kind of brain disconnect, or students with ADHD, or any of those students that struggle in the regular general classroom. They may need 60 to 100 interactions with the same thing before they truly learn it. 60 to 100, sometimes 200 or 300. And this is where Tier 1 mathematics, the general classroom, falls short. The way that we typically teach mathematics in the general classroom is we teach one topic at a time, and all the repetition is done in a condensed 2 or 3 week cycle. Whereas in the model that we're presenting to you, we identify the essential mathematics that we're going to do through the 120 chart. And once we identify the essential mathematics, those topics are cycled in every single month. I call this interaction 1 because this is the first interaction at the beginning of the school year that kids experience 120 chart. And then throughout the school year, 120 chart is brought back up maybe once a week, once a month, 3 times a year. And then every year after that, if your school and district really create this progressive, consistent approach. The way that we get more interactions over time for kids is we focus on the same task. Today's example is 120 chart, very powerful. And we allow students to interact with this task multiple times throughout the year and every year from preschool through high school. So the first thing that I will do when I introduce 120 chart, and here's a visual of it, 120 chart, it's 10 numbers in each row. So we have 12 rows, 120 numbers. And I'll ask students and prompt them with my favorite 3 words, tell me about the 120 chart. This allows me to do exactly what I was talking about before, which is gain students' perspective, let them know they belong, let them have an opportunity to process and think, and shift their cognitive demand naturally to their just right spot. And then I will ask students to share, what do you notice about the 120 chart? Now,
hey everybody, sit back and listen to the Hear Me Teach segment of the 120 chart.
All right, excellent. We are grade 6, and we are going to come back to 120 chart. There are many math discoveries that can be made from the 120 chart. We have explored this a number of times, but we're going to go deep today. Let's first retrieve, raise your hand to tell me what discoveries can be made with the 120 chart. What mathematical phenomenon can be unpacked? tell me about the 120 chart. Start us off, Emma.
You have a number that you try to see if it can touch 100.
Oh my gosh, perfect. Yep, perfect. Lauren.
With this 120, you can find anything you multiply. And the one that we do the most is finding out if you multiply by 8, what do we have?
Fantastic. Yeah, because I get real cranky about 8. Real cranky about 8. And we'll talk about the why in just a moment. What else can you tell me about our experiences with 120 chart? What else can you tell me about our experiences with 120? You want to try? Yeah, Kendall?
I was gonna say that if it's not a whole number, what number could get to 120?
Oh, love it so much. 5th grade, stay quiet because we're doing math here. 6th grade. Kendall, you said something really great. Say it again.
If it's not a whole number, what number would get to 120? Like what would not be a whole number that would get to 120?
So we have to then, and that's really the gist of 120, is skip counting. And then the goal is to land on 100. But what Kendall is saying, she said it really nicely, what if it doesn't land on 100? Then we have to talk about parts of skip counts. Now there's a reason I get cranky about 8. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this chart, get cranky about, and the first thing I want you to do is turn to the back of this chart, and I'm going to tell you something I want you to write on the back of this chart. Now, don't say this out loud, but on the back of this chart, I want you to write down the decimal number for one. Now, don't say this out loud, but on the back of this chart, I want you to write down the decimal number for one. Now, don't say this out loud, but on the 1/8. On the back of your chart, I don't want to know what your neighbor knows. On the back of your chart, I want you to write down the decimal number that is equivalent to 1/8. On the back of your chart, you're going to write down the decimal number, not what your neighbor thinks, the decimal number that is equivalent to 1/8. You're going to write down the decimal number, not what you're... Now, if you wrote a decimal that has an 8 in it, that is not correct. And this is why I get cranky with 8. When we're looking at fractions, and this is why I get cranky, every fraction has a decimal number and a percent number that is equivalent. And 1/8 is not 8%, and it's not 80%, and it's not 18%. It's nothing with an 8 in it. This is where the 120 chart comes in. So go to the front of your chart. Go to the front of your chart. The denominator of our fraction tells us exactly what you were telling me about. It is our skip counting number. So circle the numbers that when you skip count by 8 you land on. You should be really good at this by now because we've done this with 8s a lot. So go ahead and circle the numbers when you skip count by 8s. And here's another thing that if you're doing this at this point, you are not only glitched, but you really have huge math deficits. You are not circling 8, 18, 28, 38. If you did that, you are way off. So you're skip counting by 8s. So that would be 8 and then what? 16, 24, and 32. Good. Go ahead and stop. Just do those on your own. And we're trying to answer 2 questions. Number 1, how many counts by 8 to land on 100? And we're going to have to go with what Kendall said. We're going to have to go with what Kendall said, and that is we might have parts of a count. The second question is, how much money is 1/8 of a dollar? Because that's going to tell us the exact decimal equivalent. So to back up, if you need a refresher, to back up, if we want to refresh all this, we're on our 120 chart. We're skip counting by what number? 8. So circle the numbers when you skip count by 8. So you're going to circle 8 and then 16, 24, 32, and keep going. Does 8 land on 100? No. So we're going to have to use Kendall's strategy. We're going to need part of a number. So what number does 8 land on? 96 and? Yep, 104. You're right. How many skip counts by 8 lands on 96? 12. And then 104 is 13. So it's somewhere between 12 and 13. Good. 100 is exactly halfway. Yes. If I say, how many skip counts does it take? That is 12 and a half. But how much money is 1/8 of a dollar? How many cents? 12.5 cents. But where does the decimal go if I want to show 12 cents? Caleb? $0 and how do I show 12 cents? Where does the decimal go if I want to show 12 cents? Caleb? Point decimal 12. How much money is that? 0.12. How much money? 12 cents. And we could put a half, or what decimal number means a half? Tell me. 5. So the decimal equivalent for 1/8 is 0.125. And that is the exact number of skip counts that land on 100. That's the exact number of skip. Now, we've done the 120 chart.
Jonely goes on and teaches for another 15 or 20 minutes or so. If you are interested in hearing the rest of that conversation, we recommend that you join Tier 1 Interventions Workshop. That is a workshop that we host live once a month. With the next episode will be in September. So if you're listening to this after September of 2024, you will have to go back and listen to that episode later. However, we are recording them. We are putting them in a portal. You will be able to listen to the full episodes inside the course platform. So if you are interested in learning more about the Hear Me Teach segments, we have multiple versions inside the course. We look forward to hearing from you and hope that these episodes are helping you understand some math concepts in a new way. This has been Cheri from Tier 1 Interventions. Have a blast of a summer. Thanks.